When you need to do some extra practice on Wiley Plus, you can go to Orion. Now sometimes this will be an assignment that your professor has assigned for you. Other times if they haven't assigned it, then you can just do it on your own. If it is an assignment, you'll find it under the assignment list. And if you click on that assignment, you'll get some information. So you have 24 questions remaining. So basically your professor will have set up the number of questions you have to do minimum to get a grade. And as you do questions, your progress will be noted, and whatever you have left, you can see right here, along with the grading scale. So in this case, as long as I get an 80 or above, I get a 10, 60 to 80, a 9, and so forth. And I could go ahead and go right to Orion from there. But just to show you again, so here's number 2. I still have 17 left to get to my minimum number for this one. And then for Chapter 3 Orion, I have 50 left to get to that. I could also access Orion if I don't have an assignment by clicking the Orion tab, and then that will take me over to Orion. Now, when you get to Orion, this is what it's going to look like as a student. You may get some pop-ups that you can X out of. So I've done Chapter 1, and as I've done Chapter 1, I have a summary. So based on each section in Chapter 1, I have a proficiency. So this tells me basically where my proficiency is. Greens are good, yellows are kind of caution, reds are bad. I'm still working on Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, so I'll get those. I've also done Chapter 8, and you can see I do have a couple of green bars. Notice that 63% proficiency gets me to green. Basically 60% and higher, above 60%, is good work. That's green. So proficiency doesn't mean performance. So you don't have to get 9 out of 10, 90% to be good. If you're above 60%, you're in that green, which is good. The higher you are, the better. So for Chapter 1, if I wanted to practice, for example, or study, I could go up to this first learning objective that I'm at 51%. Maybe I say, okay, I'm there. I'm okay there. It's not great, but this 30% is no good. I could click Study. What that does when I click Study is it takes me back to Wiley Plus, and it filters out everything in Read, Study, and Practice except for what I really need to study. So I could come in here, click this, go through, look at all these resources, and when I'm ready, I can go back to Orion. So this allows me a personalized study plan that shows exactly what I need. Or if I wanted to, I could practice. So I could practice some of those in that section. So I could click Practice. It will adaptively feed me questions based on my proficiency. So I'm at a low proficiency, red, so it gives me easier questions until I start getting better. So the hydrogen atom can have up to 2 bonds in a Lewis structure. Well, I think that's false. I can mark it my confidence. That helps my proficiency. The more confident you are when you get a correct answer, the better your proficiency grows. The less confident you are when you get a correct answer, you don't get as much. Likewise, if you're very confident and get it wrong, you also will lose more proficiency than if you weren't. So I only answered one question, but let me go back and check to see what that has done to my proficiency, and it has raised it from 30 to 35%. So you can see you can quickly raise your proficiency by being very confident and getting the answer correct. So I could come in here and I could study, I could practice, I could do all of that. On each of those, I could study an individual learning objective, or I could practice that learning objective, or I could practice the entire chapter. So this is my personalized study. I can see what I'm doing right and wrong, see where my proficiencies are, study and or practice however I want. So you get this amazing detail from this. Let's go ahead and finish off this last Chapter 2 assignment. I have one question left. So the following alcohol is categorized, classified as, and I think I know it, so I'm going to say that. I'm also going to mark it for review. That way it's marked and I can go back and look specifically for that question. You can see all your questions, but I can look specifically for that. Once I submit, I'm told now, your diagnostic is finished. You have a 73% proficiency. Great. Now I know my proficiency. I'm doing pretty well. I can go to my dashboard. And at this point, I can now go in, and it's constantly telling you, you got to click that back. Until I click back there, it's not going to lock in that proficiency. So I can see that proficiency. Let's say I want to get a little bit up on some of these yellows. I'm going to go practice that. At any point, I can click check my progress in there, and it'll show me my current proficiency. So isopropylamine, I think it's a secondary amine. I click it, I submit it. I can check my progress. I've gone down a little because I got that wrong. So you can see how your proficiency constantly is changing. I quit. I want to go back to my dashboard. So I can go back to my dashboard. I can opt to either practice some more questions, study, practice a whole chapter, do this section. Okay, I can start doing this section that I haven't done yet. It's indicated, the red bar indicates that this is something that has been assigned that I need to do. And I have a summary here. In addition to all of that, you also have reports. So I go to my reports. You have 4 reports. Metacognitive, what that does is it tracks your proficiency versus confidence. So if you're down here in this quadrant, that means you're confident but not proficient. That's not a good place to be. Over here, you're not confident and not proficient. That's neither a good place to be. You don't want to be under this line here because that's the not proficient. But you definitely don't want to be confident and not proficient. This is good. You're confident and you're proficient. And this is pretty good. You're proficient, but you're not that confident. A lot of times students aren't that confident, but they still know some stuff. I can go down here. I can see each of the chapters. I can see where my confidence level was on each of those. And I can study or practice right in from there. So I don't have to go back to that dashboard. You can always go back to your dashboard by clicking the Orion star here. So let's say I want to see my other report, most challenging activity. That arranges everything from your worst performing objective to your best performing objective. So when you're ready to study for a test, this is perfect. You can look at this and say, okay, I'm really good on these. I don't need to spend as much time studying these. But these that are yellow, and especially if you had some red, those would be really good to study. Productivity just measures your time spent versus your proficiency. You want to be in this green one, but as long as you're fairly high up on the y-axis, which means you're proficient, even if you spend a lot of time getting there, that's okay. Once again, on any of those, you can go study and practice right in from there. The most important report is the performance report. So this one tells you initially by chapter. You can go into a chapter. It'll break it apart into sections. Yellow means you got it partially correct. Green means those questions you got fully correct. Red are incorrect. You can go into a section and see all the questions you answered. So you can click on those questions and you can go back and see those questions. So at any point you can do that. When you see a question, you can also click this little graph symbol and that'll take you back to where you were before. If you hit the back button, then it'll take you back also through to each of the previous screens. So you can view by section, go into those sections, and once again, whenever you want to come back from a question like this, just click the report. Now over here, you have the ability to filter all your questions. So at this point, I'm showing all my questions. Maybe I just want to see all of my chapter 1 questions. Now this will show me every single question I did in chapter 1, green right, yellow partially, red wrong. I can also view by learning objective if I want to just view those questions. I can view by the ones I got incorrect. So I can go back and say, okay, these are all the ones I got incorrect. Now can I understand how I did that? So I can go back and check those and see each one of those questions and try and determine what I did wrong on each of those. I can also look at the ones I marked for review. Remember, I marked a few for review. So I could see that. There's one of those. I can see that particular question. In chapter 2, maybe I marked a couple more for review. So I can see those particular questions. Once again, you can see all of your learning objectives and how you did in each of those. You can go into a learning objective. Didn't attempt any questions there. In that one, in this one, attempted these 2 questions. I got them right. So you have all this data available to you. Remember, always click the Orion star. Brings you back to your dashboard where you can either study or practice an individual learning objective or practice the entire chapter. You can also complete any diagnostic quiz you haven't done. At the beginning of every assignment, you click the begin. You have to give your confidence level, and then you're given a diagnostic quiz that ranges from 20 to 40 questions, a couple of questions per objective. So now, as a student, I have to go through this diagnostic quiz. That sets my baseline proficiency, and then from that baseline proficiency, I can determine what I need to do to study in my personalized plan. one quick thing that you may have saw there, when I quit, if you're quitting a diagnostic before finishing, click the continue later, or else you will lose that diagnostic. If you quit, if you say you're done, then you won't be able to go back and do any of those diagnostic questions. Whenever you're completely done, click the Back to Wiley Plus. That'll take your grades and put you back in Orion. So I should see that I've done some more questions. I only have 23 left here. And in Chapter 2, I'm down to 15 because I did 2 more questions. And then I can keep checking myself. As soon as you get the minimum number of questions, your grade will then be recorded once the due date hits.